Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadatatam Bhuvi Grananti Bhurida Jana. So in the last class, we have just concluded the discussion on the Navavidha Bhakti, the ninefold practices of devotion, the preliminary practice of devotion. So now the next is the Raga-Anuga Bhakti, Raga-Anuga. The Bhakti after practicing all these ninefold devotional practices, then if one practices sincerely, then a type of spontaneity comes. There is no need for any conscious practice. One develops raga, an attachment to the divine. And that makes the devotion spontaneous. And that's what is called Raga-Anuga Bhakti. But before entering into the Raga-Anuga Bhakti, certain other aspects of the Bhakti we will try to discuss from the perspective of the Bhagavatam. So now we have heard of Dharma, that there are this four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So where Dharma is the first Purushartha. So from the Vedic perspective, what it means? And is it in any way different from the Bhakti perspective? So that we will try to understand. That from the Bhakti perspective, what Dharma actually means. So now before going to the discussion of Dharma from the perspective of Bhakti, let us just try to recapitulate in a very nutshell that what is Bhakti as has been enunciated in Bhagavata Purana. We find that the definition of Bhakti is where we find this idea of this Navavidha Bhakti. It's actually in the 7th canto, the 7th part of Shrimad Bhagavatam, in the 5th chapter, in the 23rd and in the 24th verse, where we find Bhakta Prahlada. He is the Bhakta Shiromani. What it means? The crest jewel of devotion, Bhakta Shiromani. So, he is enunciating all those ninefold practices which we find is mentioned in the 23rd and in the 24th verse of the 5th chapter of the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So what are those two verses? Sri Prahlada Uvacha Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhya Atma Nivedanam. So all these 9 practices are spoken of in the 23rd verse. And then what it is mentioning after mentioning that iti pungsa arpita Vishnu bhaktischet navalakshana kriyeta bhagavati adha tat manyai adhitam uttamam. So that it is a loving devotion to the Supreme Lord. This adhitam uttamam. So It is something, Uttama means the Supreme Lord to whom this loving devotion has to be expressed. How it has to be expressed? This through Sravana, hearing, Kirtana, chanting, Smaranam, remembering, Pada Sevanam, serving, and then Archanam, worshipping, Vandanam. Vandanam is bowing down, showing gratitude, and then Dasyam, serving as a servant, that is Dasya, Sakhya, through friendship, just to try to relate through friendship. And the final is Atma Nivedanam, this surrendering to the divine. So all these ninefold practices we were trying to study from the perspective of the Shrimad Bhagavatam by extracting various verses from the Bhagavatam to enunciate all those 9 practices of the 9 preliminary practices of bhakti. Now, one thing we found that as per the bhakti tradition, bhakti is both the means and the end. So in the Jnana Yoga, bhakti is accepted, but they say bhakti is the means, jnana is the end. But in bhakti, in Bhagavatam especially, we find the idea is that bhakti is both the means and the end. You resort to these ninefold practices, and then one attains the spontaneous raga anuga bhakti. So bhakti is the means, this preparatory bhakti, so the sadhana bhakti leads you to that sadhya bhakti. Now, is it any way different from the path which has been described in the Jnana Marga? You'll find actually there is no such difference. We will find that what's the ultimate aim? There we find that bhakti has been spoken of as the ultimate means to realize the Lord by perceiving His presence in everything. So that's the type of unitary experience. So he experiences the Lord in each and every this dust nooks and corners of this creation, of this panorama. It is He who has been projected as the universe. And that's a bhakta in his climax of his spiritual evolution. We find that's the realization which has been spoken of even in Shrimad Bhagavatam. This is the idea we find everywhere. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's that wonderful, this same idea he is wonderfully expressing. How? He's saying, Jatra Jatra Netra Pade, Tatra Tatra Krishna Sfure. That wherever my eyes fall, I see Krishna blooming from each and every nook and corner of this creation. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that after realization, do you know how this creation appears like? It just appears like a grass field drenched with water after a heavy downpour. When there's a heavy downpour, the entire grass field gets drenched with water, saturated with water. Wherever you put your step, you will feel that it is saturated with water. And Sri Ramakrishna is saying with this nice example that when you come down from that realization, which you attain through bhakti, then you find that the entire creation is saturated with that Lord and Lord alone. The same idea we find with the same idea, the Isha Upanishad, the first verse, it starts with that. Isha Vasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. That whatever you see in the universe is to be pervaded by the Lord, because that's what is the reality. That's what is perceived as the final, as the climax of your spiritual evolution. And that we find is indicated even in Shrimad Bhagavatam. There's a wonderful verse. What it is saying? Khang Vayum Agning Salilam Mahingcha Jyotingshi Satvani Disho Drumadin Sarit Samudrangscha Hare Shariram Yat Kincha Bhutam Pranamet Ananyaha. So what it is saying? That a devotee should not see anything as being separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The ether, fire, air, water, earth means what I perceive. This Pancha Bhuta we are perceiving through the Pancha Indriya. So this Pancha Bhuta speaks of the entire creation. This ether, the space, fire, Agni, air, Vayu, water, Apa, earth, Prithvi, the sun, all the other luminaries, all living beings, the directions, the trees and other plants, the rivers, the oceans. Whatever a devotee experiences, he should consider it to be the expansion, the projection of Sri Krishna. And thus seeing everything that exists within the creation as the body of the Supreme Lord. It is the body of the Lord Krishna alone, of Hari alone. The devotee should offer his sincere respects to the entire expansion of the Lord's body. The entire creation is the Lord's body. So that's how he has to relate with the entire creation after his realization. So there is a total overhauling of the way he looks at the thing. There are no more sensate objects. They all become the expression, the projection of the Lord and Lord alone. So that way you find, so though we say that bhakti is the means, bhakti is the end, so that doesn't mean it's a mere some cultivating of emotionalism. No. This emotion is leading to such a realization where your object of love is not specified, located, restricted in certain person or in certain small, this infinitely small projection of the infinite. No. It encompasses the whole. And that way, this bhakti is extremely sublime. It's not like just the emotion, the love which we feel in our ordinary day-to-day life for X, Y, Z, for whoever it may be. No, it's not like that. It's actually the love for the entirety, the entire creation, knowing the divine alone to be the body, or as this creation as the body of that infinite Lord. And that's how this is a love which is sublimated. It is a sublimated form of love. And this bhakti we will find can be practiced by all. So this is you can say, a revolution in the Vedic tradition. In the Vedic tradition, as per the varna, as per the caste, which of course was determined by your temperament, not by your birth. This caste got stratified by birth. It got something crystallized as per my birth much later because of some aberration in our civilization. But if you go to the core, whether it is Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, you will find that this varna, this caste distinction, has never been indicated as being determined by janma, never, not by birth, but by guna karma, as per your skills, as per your temperament, as per your tendencies. So that we find. So even in the Bhagavatam, even in Bhagavad Gita. But we find that as far as the bhakti is concerned, they say whatever may be your temperament, and as per your temperament, whatever occupation, whatever skills you have developed, and that based on the skills, whatever occupation you have adopted, bhakti is accessible to all. The bhakti is something which is accessible to all. All can practice it. It doesn't need any special qualification. It is accessible to all regardless of caste, gender or social status. And we find, even in the Bhagavatam, Prahlada as a child is showing the highest exemplification of bhakti. Gajendra, an elephant. There we find this elephant is showing the highest form of bhakti in the form of Atma Nivedana, self-surrender. That when he is in the moment of crisis, as an artha, when his life is in danger, he is surrendering to the Lord, knowing well the Lord alone can help him out from this crisis. So there we find an elephant. He is also entitled to practice bhakti. Dhruva, this we find a child king. He is the son of a king who let us become a king even as a child. Dhruva. So this bhakti is for all, whatever may be your profession, whatever may be your way of life. Sudama, a poor Brahmin, extremely poor. The society almost despised him, but Krishna recognized him as his sakha, as his friend, and relating to him as a friend. So there we find that as sakha, Sudama, sakha that mixed with the essence of dasa, both mixed in the Sudama. That though he is friend, but at the same time, when he is going to meet his friend, he knows he is now the king. And so he, along with the idea that he is my friend, he has developed a sense of servitude. And that he is showing the highest exemplification of bhakti through his life. And he is just a poor person. So thus we see that bhakti is not restricted as per our hierarchies in society. In all society, knowingly or unknowingly, we do develop some hierarchies. But bhakti is something which is meant for all. Even in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we find in certain context, Sri Ramakrishna is saying that there is only one way by which we can go beyond all distinctions which we find in the society, all the hierarchies and the distinctions we find in the society. And what is that? That is devotion, bhakti. And Sri Ramakrishna is to give a very nice example. That you will find that the river is demarcated by its two shores. Geographically, I can locate it. That yes, this is the river which is flowing, and these are the two embankments which restricts its flow. But when there is flood, all those boundaries they get erased. The land, the river, everything becomes one, flooded with water. Sri Ramakrishna is saying bhakti is something like that. When bhakti dawns in our life, all the distinctions fall off. The overwhelming love just shatters all the distinctions. So that's a nice example Sri Ramakrishna is giving, that by bhakti alone, all distinctions can fall off. So these are the various aspects of bhakti which we will find we were discussing in the previous classes. So now, as we said, the dharma from the perspective of bhakti, that's the thing we are going to discuss today. Now how dharma has been shown, has been exemplified, has been projected in the Bhagavata Purana. So in general, what dharma means? Dharma is the righteous conduct according to one's position in life. So in the Vedic society, we find that the society was categorized. The entire population of the society was categorized as per 4 varnas, as per 4 ashrama. What are these? 4 ashrama. Let us take the 4 ashrama. The first is brahmacharya. Is a period of studentship. As a young person, as a teenager, when he is growing, the first thing, even in the present society, we find what is there? That he should be educated, civilized in the ways of life. That not only academic education, how to communicate with others, how to behave with others, how to be a responsible member of the society. So this all speaks of the studentship, where what? you have to learn Dharma, the way of the mode of our conduct. I have to operate myself in such a way in the society that I always give more importance to the collective, the collective interest. And my collective interest, my own personal interest should be guided by that collective interest. And that's Dharma. So as a student, we will find that's the thing even now. The society where they give more importance to that instead of just stuffing his brain with information. They also show him how to, just teach him that how to conduct himself in life. You'll find that society is more developed, more advanced. And that's the thing as a student. This is what is we find. The Dharma is taught. And then after this studentship, this brahmacharya, comes grihastha. So now he enters into the life as an householder. He marries, has an extended family, and he enters into the family life. And here we find that for as a student, for a brahmachari, his purushartha, his goal of life was dharma. That to internalize the values so that he can operate himself in a productive manner in the society. Now as a householder, very nice, you will find in the Vedic society, they say now you can pursue artha and kama. Artha, wealth. In the Vedic society, it was never discouraged. Of course you can have wealth. But as a student, you had learned what dharma is. You have internalized those values. So your pursuit for having wealth should be guided by that. Kama, to enjoy the sensate pleasures of life. Yes, that also can be a purushartha. But they have to be guided by dharma. We'll find in the society that whenever the dharma is not the guiding factor, when we are trying to acquire wealth, when we are going to have the sensate pleasures of life, if it is not guided by dharma, that's what crime is. And that's what the grihastha, they say the purushartha. Yes, of course you can run after the pleasures of life, you can acquire wealth, but it has to be guided by dharma. And then the next stage of life is vanaprastha. That yes, a certain stage in life will come where you have acquired sufficient wealth, power, position, and then a state of plateau comes. It means, what after will I do with life? All the things which I have thought as the goal I have attained. Now I find that life is becoming demotivating. I don't find any meaning in life. And then the scriptures comes to open up the spiritual portal for us. And then with the vanaprastha, we though and have not renounced the world totally, but at the same time we have started practicing contemplation, being aware of the spiritual dimension of existence. And as we become more and more skilled in that, then last stage of life is sannyasa, where we physically renounce everything. Because now I have acquired this all the skills in the way of contemplation. So now I can renounce everything. Sannyas means that samyak nyasa, renouncing everything in totality, and can lead an exclusive spiritual life in the final stage of my life. So it is a gradation, wonderful gradation. And there are also varnas, that as per my temperament as a grihastha, I can be a brahmana, I can be a kshatriya, I can be a vaishya or a shudra. It actually speaks of various occupations. Brahma means those who are by nature scholarly. they have a tendency towards the academic knowledge. They are all Brahmanas. Kshatriya, those who want to go in politics, administration. So they are the Kshatriyas. Vaishyas, those who like to run business. They are the Vaishya. And Shudra, all the services we find. The work the council is doing for us. The work the hospital, the doctors are doing for us. It's all service. The service-oriented work, that's the Shudras. So this as a Grihastha, there's the various Varnas are there. So in the Vedic society we find very nicely, they understood the human nature and divided the entire human population into these 4 Varnas. As a Grihastha, we have to practice these 4 Varnas as per our temperament. And even in our individual life, we have to, in the first stage of life, we have to be a student, brahmachari, then we become Grihastha, and then we go to the state of Vanaprastha, and at last sannyasa. And in these 4 stages, as we just now told, we practice the 4 Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So nicely we find the entire humanity was guided in such a way that you need not have just one particular ideal. As per your way of life, as per your stage of life, as per your temperament, you can have various Purusharthas. But we will find that in the entire Vedic literature, the Bhakti was something, it is there, the mention of Bhakti is there, but it is something which is not prominent. So in Bhagavatam we find that now the religion has evolved. There they say that whatever may be the stage of life, whatever may, as per your stage of life, as per your occupation, all the gradations of Varna, of Asrama, of Purusharthas, whatever it may be, unless Bhakti is associated with that, you can never find fulfillment in life. So, Dharma is the righteous conduct according to one's position in life, but ultimately rooted in devotion to God. So as Sri Ramakrishna used to say that let the love of God be your toothache. Very nice that when I have a toothache, whatever I may be doing, a part of my mind is always registering that ache. I can never forget it. Others may not know it, but subjectively I am always aware of that pain. So here also in Bhagavatam they are saying that whatever may be your Varna, whatever may be your asrama, the stage of life, Bhakti, try to inculcate Bhakti at the very tender age of life. Even Prahlada will say that the life is so uncertain. We don't know when it is going to end. So don't waste your time thinking that let me enjoy my life and then in the later stages I will think of Bhakti. So he's saying very nicely that from the very inception, from the very beginning, try to inculcate that, develop that Bhakti. So here we find in the Bhakti Shastra what they're saying, that though Artha and Kama are the means for sustenance and propagation of one family. That Artha means wealth. With that I sustain the family, I may sustain myself and the family. And Kama, the lust. With that this family is maintained. The generations, that the propagation of the generations, succeeding generations. That's the lust, the product of Kama. So here in the Bhakti Shastra they are saying that they themselves, by themselves, cannot be the Purushartha. They can help us to attain certain goal. What? That yes, it helps to sustain myself, it helps to propagate my family, but it cannot be end in itself. Just the way sometimes we feel to enjoy the sensuous pleasures of life is the end in itself. So here Bhakti is pinpointing, no. with your wealth, as Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel, he is saying, with wealth, what can you do? Very, very nicely he says that with টাকায় ভাত হয় আর থাকার জন্য মাথার উপর একটা ছাদ হয়. Means you get your food and you get your shelter. However wealth you may have, at last you find that you cannot enjoy it. That as I have amassed a lot of wealth, I cannot think of having delicacies every day. And within a few days, I will develop some health conditions like blood sugar and other. The doctor will restrict my diet. So with all my wealth, I will find that I cannot simply go on enjoying. There's a limitation. So with wealth, I cannot get ultimate infinite fulfillment, happiness. With that, it just gives that basic necessities are fulfilled by that. But ultimately, if we have not developed bhakti, and with that we try to regulate each and activity of our life, having the devotion as the background always there in our life, you will find that the life starts becoming meaningless. In the present world, we find that there's so much this prevalence of all sorts of mental problems, psychological issues. It's all because that ultimately we will find there's a type of dissatisfaction with life. I find no meaning. In spite of all the wealth in the materialistic civilization, at last we all suffer from a sense of meaninglessness. And that's what Bhagavatam is saying, that if we can culture this devotion, that will be the spice of our life. That will give a sense of fulfillment in our life. So with Artha and Kama, they are the means of sustenance and propagation, but they are not the end in themselves. So the ultimate dharma in all the stages of life, in all the ashramas, is devotion to God. So that's how you will find in the Bhagavatam the dharma from the perspective of devotion has been defined as that the bhakti is the only purushartha. The other 4 purusharthas are all secondary. And unless bhakti is given that prime importance, all other purusharthas become meaningless. So that importance has been given to bhakti in Bhagavat Purana. And now we'll gradually go to the references. So the Bhagavata emphasizes that the true dharma is aligned with bhakti. That mere secular pursuits and social duty, as has been spoken of, that this Artha and Kama is our Purushartha, that speaks of all the secular pursuits, all of this secular duty. But they, without the love of God, cannot give us any satisfaction. It is bound to bring a sense of meaninglessness in life. And that way they are all incomplete. And even in the Bhagavad Purana, we will find that, as we were saying, the Bhakta Shiromani Prahlada, in the 7th canto, this Prahlada is speaking of the supremacy of the devotion over all worldly pursuits and duties. We find that in this episode, in the 7th canto, this episode occurs in the 7th canto, and during the childhood of Prahlada Maharaja, the great devotee of this Lord Narasimha. So we find that Hiranyakashipu, his father, is a powerful demon king, and he is obsessed with his worldly power. He is extremely egoistic, and he performs a lot of rituals, but without devotion. In the Vedic period, the rituals were the way to train your mind. See, from the morning to evening, it was all regimented. At such and such hour, you have to do such and such practices. Lit the fire, offer oblations. How many oblations as per the lunar calendar? You know that as per on the first phase of the full moon, when the moon is very small, just a small portion, as like a sickle, the moon is visible. You have to restrict your food. You will take just one morsel of food. when in the Ditya, when the moon has grown up, a little more food you can take. On the full moon, you can have a sumptuous meal. And again, after the one day after the full moon, you have to reduce. As per the size of the moon, your food quantity also is reduced. And again, when it is on the new moon day, you fast. So just think, these all were the regimentations through which you are disciplining yourself. And any form of discipline you will find helps us to progress in our life as per our secular attainments are concerned. It helps us. Even in the modern day, you will find in psychology, there's a famous experiment, that this marshmallow experiment, which speaks of that. The one who is more disciplined, the one who can delay his gratifications, they excel in life, in their academics, in their profession, because they are always aware of the long-term goals. They develop the power to overlook, just to subdue the short-term goals and look at the long-term gains. So renunciation is not negative, it is something positive. It means renouncing something small to get something great, something bigger. And all the disciplining in the form of rituals was that. But that itself is not the end in itself. With that you can excel in life. But ultimately that satisfaction with all your wealth, with all your pleasure, at last you will find you are bound to have that sense of meaninglessness. I've attained all this, but what for? This life, after all, very nicely as Swami Vivekananda used to say, that the nature gives us everything at certain point of time and again takes away everything at certain point of time. However we may think that it is my intelligence, it is my power, as we age, they all start dwindling. If it was mine, then how it is that it has been drained away, it has drained away. So, if we have some common sense, we have to agree it is the nature at certain point of time which endows us with all those capabilities, and at a certain point it takes away. Whether we will it or not, it will force us out from that. And then we find what a waste the entire life was. My pursuit was for something which is ephemeral. It all drains out at last. Nothing remains as permanent. And we go on wasting our life, lives after life, with this pursuit. So that's why here in the scriptures they say that unless with all these pursuits you have not developed devotion, then your life is a waste, it's of no avail. That's why we find when Hiranyakashipu, this demon king, is trying to explain, who was obsessed by his power, by this ego, by all this disciplinary supremacy, ritualistic supremacy, then Prahlada responds with a wisdom beyond his years. So there's a wonderful verse in the Bhagavatam, the 31st verse, in the 5th chapter of the 7th canto of Bhagavatam. What is saying? Nate viduhu swarthagating. Nate viduhu swarthagating he Vishnu durashaya ye vahi arthamaninah andha yathandhai upaniyamanaha te api ishatantram urudamni vaddha. So what it means? The persons who are strongly entrapped in bondage, who are bound by the materialistic way of living. They cannot understand the goal of life is to engage in the devotion to the Lord. They don't understand at all. They never give it any consideration. And as a blind man guided by another blind man, that's what we find. Even as a small child, the moment he starts going to the school, you try to impart some value, there are certain blind men who have already started guiding him, whom your child thinks is their ideal. Even in the society you can relate. And the parents sometimes feel helpless. And that's what Prahlada is saying. It is just like the blind who is being is the blind led by the blind. Blind man guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch. So we are all in this bandwagon. Just all the so-called role models of life whom we have chosen, they themselves have no sense of fulfillment. And we take them as ideal and we follow them. It is just like the blind led by the blind. So that's how strongly Bhagavatam is saying, that Prahlada is saying to his father. It is just like the blind leading the blind. They're all materially attached people, led by another materially attached person, bound by the ropes of all these actions. So, and these are very strong bondage. And they continue to suffer in materialistic life with all sorts of miseries. It continues. So life becomes an advertisement. But subjectively, the one whom I think is prosperous person, having a huge house, very luxurious car, lot of wealth, a young person seeing him thinks, oh, that's my ideal in life. And at last, when he attains that, he finds that this is all pomp and glory, external pomp and glory. Inside there is no satisfaction. The life becomes just a mere advertisement with almost no inner satisfaction. And that's what Prahlada is trying to convince to his father with that wonderful verse which we see in the Bhagavatam. So thus, devotional service, beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, is the ultimate dharma for the living, all the living being in the society, in human society. That's what has been spoken of in the Bhagavatam. The 22nd verse in the 3rd chapter of the 6th canto, that in all our activities, the background of the mind, the repetition of the name of the Lord should go on. As we said, He is one with His name. When I am repeating His name, I am actually with Him in His presence, because He is present in His name. Nam, Nami, Abhed. They cannot be differentiated. You take the name of the Lord, immediately your heart fills with devotion, because He is in His name. So that's what has been spoken of in the Bhagavatam, that this Nama Rata, this constantly remembrance of the Lord, His name, that's the thing should go on always, whatever activities we are doing. Etavan eva lokesmin pungsang dharma parasmritah bhakti yoga bhagavati tan nama grahana adivi. That how to relate to the Lord with bhakti? Through His name, tan nama grahana adivi. So the goal of the dharma from the perspective of bhakti has been nicely described in the Bhagavatam from the verses 9 to 14 in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto of the first part of Bhagavatam. So these verses, we will go through them quickly. What these verses say? Dharmasya hi apavargasya na artha arthaya upakalpate na arthasya dharma ekantasya kamo labhaya hismrita. All these occupational engagements, that all our occupations, with that we are engaged with this world. So these are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. As Swami Vivekananda used to say very nicely, that when God is the means, world is the end, it is sheer materialism. For the majority, religion means that God is just the means. I pray for all worldly gains. I want a good job. I want good relationships. I want power, position in life. So these are the ends. And what is spirituality? Very nicely Swami saying, it's just the opposite. Where world is the means, God is the end. What is the means? I have not renounced the world. Through all my occupational engagements, they are going on, but I know myself to be the instrument in the hand of the divine, and with that awareness, keeping the God in the background of my mind, I am engaged with the world, and that helps me to evolve spiritually, at last resulting in liberation. So that dharmasya hi apavargasya, that all the dharmas are ultimately meant for apavarga. Apavarga means liberation. Na artha arthaya kalpate. They are not the end in itself. As we will find even in the Gospels very nicely, Sri Ramakrishna is saying that Shambhu, one rich man, influential person who used to visit Sri Ramakrishna. One day he came to Sri Ramakrishna and told, bless me. That what you bless me? That bless me that with all my wealth, I can do a lot of service. I can make huge hospitals, schools, colleges. And Sri Ramakrishna is saying that if God comes in front, in your presence, is that what you are going to ask for? So sometimes we may find that this Shambhu is a nice person. What wrong he has said? But Guru Maharaj is saying, Sri Ramakrishna is saying, that first seek him. After that you may do whatever you want. And he is giving a very nice example. That if your intention is to visit certain shrine, some temple, and you will find there are a lot of beggars sitting outside the temples, as in India you will find it's a common thing. Now if on your way to the temple, seeing the beggars, you just start distributing wealth to them and you don't go to the shrine itself. So the purpose for which you have actually just were going, that is not served. So he's saying first go and meet the Lord, and then you go on serving as much as you want. Don't forget him. Keep him as the pole star of your life. And then you may do whatever you may want. Forgetting the Lord, doing all those things becomes meaningless. So they are not the end in itself. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for this apavarga, liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. That I am acquiring wealth for my sustenance, for the family's sustenance. There it's over. And then after that, what? That's just for my sustenance. But my goal is to develop that love for God, devotion. That is not the end in itself. That's what is mentioned. They should never be performed for just material gain. Na arthasya dharma ekantasya. Just acquiring the wealth cannot be the ekanta dharma, the ultimate dharma. Kamo labhaya hismita. And furthermore, what is this sages, according to the sages? One who is engaged in the occupational service should never use the material gain to just cultivate sense gratification. No. The sense gratification has a purpose. It's for the propagation of your family. But it is not the end in itself. The end is somehow to develop that devotion. So just see, in the Bhagavatam, just what we were discussing, there's this verses actually are there to substantiate, to just act as a reference of what we were just now discussing. That after all, bhakti is the only goal of life in whatever stage of life we may be. And then the next verse, what it says? Kamasya na indriya pratilabha jiveta yavata jivasya tattva jikyasa nartha yah cha iha karmabhi. The life's desire should never be directed toward sense gratification. Kamasya na indriya pratilabha. Just for the sense gratification, the desires are not there. One should desire for a healthy life, for self-preservation. This, as the sharira madhyam khalu dharma. Without this, if I don't have proper health, I cannot practice bhakti, I cannot practice devotion, I cannot practice spirituality. So that's why health is required. But we should not be obsessed by that. That in the present world, we find that we are obsessed by health alone. There is no other goal. Just how to live long, how to live healthy, how at the age of 65, 70 to brag, just see how young I look, how beautiful I look. I'm not aging. As if that is the goal of life. Yes, most probably I am bragging at the age of 60, 70, but how long you are going to brag? Are you sure that you are going to maintain your health through eternity? No. Maybe just few more years. That's in Mahabharata. There is a very nice verse. What it says? That all our endeavors of life actually is what? The entire life is just like playing chess. We are playing chess with whom? With Kala, with time. Our opponent is time, with whom we are playing chess. And we know who will win. We know it is the time who will win. But still we like to play. Why? Not to win. We know that we won't win. Just to play one or two moves extra, nothing else. Just see how nicely it has been told. It's all our endeavors for health, for long life, everything is just to play one or two moves extra. They're not the end in itself. And that's how nicely is because Kamasyana Indriya Pratilava Jiveta Yavata. That one should desire only health life just for preservations, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. That unless you have good health, you cannot practice the spirituality. You cannot endeavor for a spiritual life. So that's why even in Vedas they tell Ashishta, Balishta, Dradishta. Have an integrity of character. Have a strong body. Because these are the basics the foundations on which your spiritual life is. The spiritual evolution is the goal. They are not the goal in itself. So Jivasya Tattva Jigyasa is for Tattva Jigyasa, for knowing that ultimate truth. Na artha ya cha iha karma bhi. And all these actions are not the end in itself. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So that's the thing. And then Vadanti tat tattva vida tattvam yat jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. How nicely it is in all the scriptures you will find somehow that Catholicism is there, universalism is there. How nicely it is being told that when you are doing tattva jigyasa, where it leads to? The knowers of the truth, who know the absolute truth, call this non-dual. See here, even in Bhakti, they are expressing that non-advayam, that non-dual substance. A jnani calls it as Brahman. A yogi calls it as a Paramatma. And a devotee relates to the same reality as Bhagavan. So here you find they're speaking of that unitary experience. It's just because from the different perspective it looks different, but it is the same, that non-dual principle alone. The tattva vida tattvam yat jnanam advayam brahmeti brahma iti paramatma iti bhagavan iti shabdyate. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, there is the same water which quenches our thirst. Same water. As per the different language, it is called as water, aqua, jal, pani. It's just the difference in the terminology. But in essence, it is the same thing. It quenches our thirst. So in whatever terminology we may call it, whether we call it Brahma, we call it Paramatma, we call it Bhagavan, but that is the search, ultimate search, the search for that non-dual truth. That should be the basic ideal of our life, and to relate to that through devotion. Tats sraddhadhana munaya jnana vairagya yuktaya pashyanti atmani chatmanan bhaktya sruta grihitaya. The one who has endowed with Shraddha, Shraddha is very important. If someone has that faith, because at the very first day I am not going to have that devotion, all this idea of the spiritual dimension of my existence may appear to be, may just not appeal to my rational mind at the beginning. But I should be humble enough to understand that it is because of the lack of my understanding. Let me culture it, and a subjective feeling will come, and that alone can, be the proof of all the truths which has been spoken of in the scriptures. Let me give it a try. As Swami Vivekananda very nicely says, how many lives you have wasted? Why not waste one life for me? For me means for the ideal. Because nicely saying that after all, life is a waste. You have wasted, and you think spirituality, the life which I try to represent, which I am representing, is a waste, is useless. You think it is a waste? Well, already you have wasted so many thousands of lives. Why not waste one life for me? Just to give a try. And that's the faith. That's the faith. The one who is endowed with that faith, well equipped with that knowledge and detachment, he realizes the absolute truth, and by rendering this devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. So he has heard it, and as he has faith, and then gradually he develops that devotional relationship with that highest absolute. So just see, this bhakti has been spoken of as the sanam bonam of the human life. Atah pumbhi dvijasreshtha varnasrama vibhagasha. So here we find at last the dharma from the perspective of bhakti in Bhagavatam, how nicely it has been enunciated here. Varnasrama vibhagasha swanushthitasya dharmasya samsiddhi haritoshanam. That whatever may be your varna asrama vibhaga differentiation, but they have to be practiced swanushthistasya. It's not that I will forsake them in the name of my devotion. I have to perform them with full nishtha, with perseverance, perfectly. But they all should be with the aim, ultimate aim, to please the Lord through devotion. That it is the Lord who has given me all those faculties which I think is mine. It's nothing mine. He has given me for lokasangra, for the preservation of his own creation. I'm just an instrument. He's working through me. As per my temperament, he has channelized me into a particular varna, into a particular asrama, and it is his essence which is working through me. And I surrendered to him, Atma Nivedana, knowing well it is he who is working through me. I'm just the nimitta, I'm just an instrument in his hand. So that's the one who knows that he is relating to the Lord always as devotion. And for him, there is no question of this going after the desires of life, going for the results, the fruition of his actions, because he is doing it with a sense of that surrender. And that's what pleases the Lord. That's what speaks of evolution in bhakti. So therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about the Lord, glorify, remember and worship the God. Worship God, who is the protector of devotees. Tasmad ekena manasa bhagavan satvatang patihi srotavya kirtitavyascha dheya pujyascha nityada. So that's the conclusion which is spoken of here as the only dharma, only this righteous path of all life to develop this bhakti. Bhakti then is the ultimate dharma, and hence the sanam bonam and very goal of life, as a 5-year-old Prahlada convinces his fellow students. We'll find that in that episode when Prahlada was sent to this Guru Grihavasa, that he was all the other students, his mates, whenever he was getting chance, he was trying to influence them in the path of bhakti. What he's saying? Kaumara acharit pragya dharman bhagavataniha durlabhang manushang janma tat api adhruvam arthadam. So this human life is very precious, because this is the only life where you can relate to the spiritual dimension of your existence. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Manushi ekmatra jeev je Bhagavan chinta korte pare. You can think of the divine, and we don't know when again I am going to get it. It is a great opportunity. Prahlada is indicating that. Getting this human birth, don't waste it. Let all your pursuits be for the divine and divine alone. So the intelligent person should use the human body from his very childhood to practice devotion, giving up all other engagements. The human body is the most rarely achieved. And although temporary like other bodies, it is meaningful, because in human life alone one can perform devotional practices. And even a slight amount of sincere devotion service can give one complete perfection. How? Even a slight, because that will remain as sanskara. Even if I don't succeed in this life, that sanskara, that latent impression, will force me again to resort to the devotional practices in the succeeding birth, ultimately leading to the liberation. So that's why they say even a little practice is good. Even in Bhagavad Gita, the same idea is there. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. And that's what Prahlada is indicating. That resort to devotion. Even a little you practice, that itself will help you to liberate from the mahabhaya, from the fear of this worldly existence. Yatha hi purushasya iha vishnupada upasarpanam yat esha sarva bhutanam priya atmishvara surita. So the human form of life affords us a chance to attain God. So that's precious this human birth is. So therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in the devotional practice. To the Lord, that to the God who is all benevolent, who is always there to reciprocate our love, devotion towards Him. Actually, it is He who is waiting. It's not we. The moment we turn around, it is He who will come running to embrace us. For that He is eternally waiting. So the moment we do that, the Lord is extremely pleased, because for that only He is waiting. And that should be the sanam bonum of our human existence. So that's we can conclude. That is the overall discussion, that somehow to develop that devotion. In Bhagavatam, in one portion, there's very nicely it has been said, Yena tena prakarena Krishne mano niveshayat. Yena tena prakarena. By hook or by crook, keep your mind in God. A thief never thinks what is the moral way of stealing. Anyway, that's the wealth I want. Whatever way I can get it is okay. So Bhagavatam is saying, for attaining devotion, you have to have that type of attitude. Yena tena prakarena. Somehow I have to attain that devotion alone. Because that alone is the treasure of my life. Yena tena prakarena Krishne mano niveshayat. And that should be the only goal. Once you attain that, then you understand what the real fulfillment of life is. You just become transformed, and you become the storehouse, the source, the lighthouse of prema. Prema means love, where peace speaks of all sorts of positive emotions. Once you have that, naturally your relationships improve. You don't have to consciously try to improve your relationship. Through devotion, when your heart becomes full of love, your vision gets broadened, and you start building your life on that broadened vision. Your relationships will start improving. And that those relationships are not superficial relationships. They are highly engaging. There's a purpose behind all those relationships, because you have attained that fulfillment and you want that others too should attain that fulfillment. So in all that relationship is not mere physical or organical. There's a meaning behind it, that prema, P stands for positive emotions, R for the relations, E for engagement, highly engaging. And that engaging relations are not an end in itself. There's a meaning behind it. That what I have attained, I want the others to attain. That meaning is there behind it. It's not mere relation. And at last it ends in accomplishment. A for account. That what I have attained, I have helped others also to attain that. That's what is meant by Atmana Moksha Jagat Hita. Atmana Mokshartham Jagat Hitaya cha. My own liberation and the welfare of all. And that's how Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa goes hand in hand. The upliftment of others and my own liberation, Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa. These two can go hand in hand. And that's what is being indicated as our motto of the Ramakrishna mission. Atmana Mokshartham Jagat Hitaya cha. And that's what all the scriptures are echoing. The same thing. So that's what our Dharma should be. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars. We will take certain other aspects of Bhakti in the succeeding classes before we proceed to the Raganuga Bhakti. Thank you all. Namaskars.